All right. Let me see. Hello, everyone. If anybody's there, just checking if we are online here on LinkedIn. Hopefully, if anybody's there, you can just drop me a comment so that we can start. Last week we did the live in Spanish about this. So in the case you're more comfortable in Spanish, you can go back to my feed and you will find the live session in Spanish. All right. So yeah, here we are connected. So I'm going to go just to check the comments because I can't see the comments here. So hopefully. All right, so today we're going to talk, well, first of all, because we're talking about football, I guess today it's time to say congratulations to Spain for the World Cup and also to Argentina for getting to the second position, right, for getting the silver medal. So having said this, let's start talking about the penalties, right? What happens? Messi, Mbappe, Baggio, the best players in the world at the most important moment of their careers, technically perfect. Thousands of hours of training behind them, all the experience in the world, and they all missed the penalty that mattered the most. Why? That's the question I'm going to answer today. So the answer has nothing to do with talent, character, or desire. Yeah, it has to do with something that happens in the nervous system in milliseconds, and that almost no one is actually training yet, at least systematically. So for those that don't know me, I'm Claudia Spolaor. I'm the founder of Quantum Performance and Coupe Hub. This new app that I created. And this is what I work on, the nervous system response. So we're gonna, well, you know, the 2026 World Cup just gave us the most brutal data in recent football history when it comes to penalties. So the 35% of penalties were missed, 1 every 3. Messi missed 2 penalties in this World Cup against Austria and against Egypt. And he became the player with the most missed penalties in the World Cup history, 4 in total. Mbappe missed in the quarterfinal against Morocco, the best young player in the world, 1 penalty, or one of the best. Yeah, the most important moment, right? Hakimi, considered one of the most reliable takers at PSG, and for the Moroccan national team, hit the post. So what do they have in common? It wasn't lack of talent. It wasn't lack of experience. Something invisible failed them. Let me know if you're there. You can just drop me something in the comments or if you have any questions, all right? So this thing that we are going to talk about, it's an invisible thing that has a name, that has actually a name, and it's called the protection mode. So when a player stands at penalty spot in a very important moment, a World Cup, a final, a knockout match, their brain doesn't just feel the pressure. The nervous system automatically enters in this protection mode. The protection mode is an acute stress response. It happens in milliseconds and it's completely automatic. The player doesn't choose it. It can't control it, can't avoid it through willpower. Yeah. And what does this state is that, you know, like on the player's body, it actually acts on the player's body. Yeah, right before they shot. So there are these 3 things important that happen when the player is in protection mode. So one is the muscle tension that increases. The movement no longer flows in the same way. The technique they've repeated thousands of times In training, it just gets alterated by tension. They don't even consciously perceive. So the second thing that happens is the decision making literally shuts down. They hesitate on the spot without knowing exactly what they're going to do. So the goalkeeper can actually read it. Yeah. Then the player, this is the third thing, the player stops being present. The mind goes to the outcome or to what happens if they miss, instead of being in the shot. So when does this protection mode activate? When the player feels that missing that penalty means something extremely dangerous. What does this mean? If they miss the penalty, they don't belong, for example. They will disappoint millions. When they feel that their value as a player, as a person, depends on that shot. And when the brain perceives that as a survival threat, the protection mode activates automatically. So that's when everything happens. Now, it's not a lot of character, it's pure biology. Think about my dear Roberto Baggio in 1994 World Cup, Italy against Brazil, the final, the penalty that decided a World Cup. Baggio was the best player in the world at that moment, and he had scored every one of his previous penalties in that tournament, and then he missed the most important one. Not because he didn't want to, not because he didn't know how. His nervous system literally entered in protection mode at the most important moment of his life. And at the same thing, literally, I would say the same thing happened to Messi this year, and actually twice. Yeah. So here, there's a real problem. I want you to understand. Clubs prepare penalties. They practice. It's consistent. You practice the technique. They work on the pre-shot routine. They do the psychological work, and yet 35% penalties at the 2026 World Cup were missed. Why? Because all of that preparation works on the conscious level. The mind has different levels. We have the conscious level, and if you haven't worked on the deeper level, the conscious mind produces the 5% of your whole thoughts and emotions. Now, what's the 95%? The subconscious, that is literally connected to the nervous system. All right. So the thing is that when it comes to the conscious mind, it tells the player what, when you work on that, you tell the player what to think and how to breathe, what routine to follow. But the protection mode works deeper, on the deeper layer, as we said. So it doesn't get to the conscious level. It happens before the player can even think. So you can try to think, you can try to control your mind, but the 95% is there. Yeah, so it's that's how we work. Yeah. So it's like trying to fix a car's engine by repainting it, right? It's the same. So what you need is a more conscious technique. It won't take you anyway. You've done that, you have to do it, but it doesn't save those type of moments. You need to change the program in the nervous system that is there. Yeah, so it's activated. So the program that activates automatically when the pressure is at its highest point. Yeah, so that requires working on a deeper level at a subconscious level. Yeah. Now, what I would say, let me know if you have any questions. Let me see. Meanwhile, I'm just going to give you 1 minute. So if anybody's there has questions, you can let me know. Is that all clear? I hope so. I'm just checking my phone because I can't see the comments from my laptop. So now, okay, no comments, no questions. So the nervous system doesn't really respond to reality. That's how it works. It responds to how we perceive reality, and the perception is conditioned by everything we've lived through. If you know, past experiences, beliefs, patterns, wired literally over the years. So when you think, for example, because like how you feel doesn't depend on the reality. It depends on what you are perceiving on reality, right? If you think about, I don't know, two people, first day of skiing, for example, right? One, both of them are learning, they keep on falling, let's say. One can get very frustrated and the other one is just having fun. So it's not the situation, right? It's just how they are interpreting the situation. And so that's the thing. That's where we have to work, basically. So if you think about this, why can a player take perfect penalties in training for weeks and miss in the final, right? Because in the training, the nervous system doesn't perceive a threat. There are two different situations. In the final, it does. And the perception of the threat doesn't come from the penalty itself. It comes from what the player has wired in about what missing there means, right? So sometimes it comes from very recent experience, for example, you know, a missed penalty in the previous match that got recorded as a threat. And sometimes it comes from much, much further back. Yeah, from childhood moment when they learn that failing meant not being enough, not being loved. I'm gonna get to this question. And so not belonging. So yeah, we're not afraid to say that sometimes there is a wounded child inside the elite player. Yeah? And that child activates exactly at the moment of the penalty. Let me check this question. How come Mbappe missed against Morocco but scored penalties that were even more important? Well, we don't know exactly, right? But maybe for us very important, and for him that was more dangerous. But that's a pretty good question. Even more important, like in the UC final. Yeah, the World Cup final. All right. Yeah, I mean, we don't know exactly, right? There are many factors, and sometimes I'm gonna get to explain this actually. Sometimes this protection mode is activated by these things that I call brain tags. For example, a noise, a specific noise that you don't know it, but maybe you unconsciously connect that specific noise to something very traumatic in your childhood. You know what I mean? And we don't know it, but somehow when you hear that noise, your body just gets tightened. Yeah. So we don't know exactly. In this case, it would be really interesting to figure it out. But basically, it's all about how he was perceiving that. Because maybe like if the match is more complicated, you know, that could be experienced more dangerous than a final. Even, you know, it depends on how you're perceiving that particular moment. Yeah, I don't know if I was clear enough. Let me know, Donovan. So having said this, how do we change the program? By bringing the athlete to a specific state, what we call the theta state, the state between waking and sleep, where the brain is completely open and receptive. And in that state, we can do two things. That state, by the way, we are in that state when we're kids, from 0 to 7, 8, 9 years old. Yeah, 7 years old, most likely. And so that's why kids absorb everything. They're like sponges, right? Well, we can go back to that state, okay? And so when we're there, we can first train the player to experience that important penalty before it happens and associate it with calm, confidence, belonging. And the brain doesn't distinguish whether they're living it for real or in that state. The brain doesn't really distinguish that. Oh, thank you, Donovan. So it records it in the same way, yeah? And then the second thing that we can do is that we go and change the information at the root. So we change what the failure means for the player's nervous system. When missing stops being a survival threat and the player is set free, okay? So the player who is strong in the face of loss is the one who actually takes the best penalties. So this is important. And because they shoot free, because they shoot present, because all their energy goes into the shot, not into managing the fear of missing. That's why we are having a really good effect there, okay? So, okay. So this is exactly what we do with Coopy Hub, which is this app that I designed to train the athlete's automatic nervous system response through guided session of 15-20 minutes. We don't teach the player what to think before the penalty. You have plenty of psychologists that are great and amazing, and they can do that. We don't give them more conscious routines. We bring them to a theta state and work on the internal programs that condition their automatic response under pressure. Yeah. So the player does it in their downtime, on the bus, in the hotel, after training, on the phone, without disrupting anything from the stuff. So this is a way of working, which is it's automatic training. We work the subconscious response, what happens in milliseconds before the shot. The player does it alone, so there's no friction, whenever they want, wherever they are. We don't wait for the player to miss in a final. We train them before it happens. But I also want to be honest with you, Coopy Hub is not a crisis intervention. If a player has been blocked for months, they need deeper individual work. What Coopy Hub does is preventing the player from entering in protection mode at the moment of the penalty, before the pressure arrives. So if you think about that, like what does it cost a club when the best penalty taker, we can say, misses the shot that defines the season? Yeah. So the cost in results in league position and investment is exactly what can be prevented. So Messi, Mbappe, Baggio, Hakimi, they didn't lack in talent, they didn't lack in experience. The nervous system just entered in protection mode at the moment that mattered the most. And that can be trained before it happens, okay? So if you are a sporting director or a coach and this connects with something you're seeing in your squad, send me a DM this week. We can talk. And if you're an athlete and you recognize this pattern in yourself, reach out too. I also have solutions for you. So yeah, I have still space for 3 clubs before the season starts, and that could be interesting for many of you. And yes, so if you have any questions, any other questions, I'm here, or you can just drop me a message. I hope this worked, Donovan. That was just an example, and it also depends on the perception you have on of your opponents. Yeah. So something that can help you, for example, you're a football player, would be telling yourself constantly whenever you're going to a game and you perceiving your opponent better than you can just repeat everywhere where making my opponents bigger than me, I destroyed and created. Yeah. And you just keep on repeating it. Okay. And then you can also use some visualization and making yourself bigger once you get into the field, just making yourself huge, like a giant. Yeah. Comparing to your opponents. That also works sometimes. Okay. So little tips. Nice. Having said that, hope everything was clear enough, and see you soon. Bye-bye.